Down and we'll talk about them a little bit. Neurons are the building blocks of the nervous system. Okay? And then I want you to know that dendrites are the short, bushy, branch-like, let's put an H on there, B-R-A-N-C-H, branch-like structures. Okay, so we've got dendrites are short, bushy, branch-like, B-R-A-N-C-H-L-I-K-E, structures that emerge from the neuron cell body and receives signals from the adjoining neurons. Now, that's a definition, but let's look at what that is, okay? So what happens is we actually have a nerve cell, okay? It's literally a cell. It literally has a cell membrane, has a nucleus in the middle, and that cell, whether it's a muscle cell, whether it's a brain cell, actually comes off into what we have a neuron. It forms this long nerve. When we say neurons, we're talking about nerves. It forms this long nerve. Well, on the tips of this nerve, those are the dendrites. And that's the sensory thing that sends us information, okay? Now, you need to realize, depending on where this is, if it's in your skin and you begin to feel something, then you've got it could be a lot of dendrites. And I mean, we may have on our face, just to feel the breeze that we may have an incredible number of dendrites. Remember, the dendrites are the short, bushy-looking things here. Okay. Now, why are they so important? They're so important because we're going to send a neurotransmitter. We're going to send a chemical. We're going to send acetylcholine. We're going to send norepinephrine. We're going to actually send a chemical across these and make an electrical connection, which connects these, and that's called a synapses. Now, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's called a synapses. And we make an electrical current here so that all of a sudden this neuron can send information to this one or vice versa. And then what does it do? It goes on to the next one. Goes on to the next one and sends them all the way till we get either to the brain or to the muscle. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. So this is a system of neurons as we go. Now here's the situation that we have. The situation that we have is this synapses is so critical. So we're going to talk later about electrolytes. If we don't have enough electrolytes in our body, then we can't make this synapses. For example, you may have woken up in the middle of the night with a cramp, or when you get a cramp in your arm, or man, I've even had a cramp in my jaw. It's kind of crazy. So what causes a cramp? Well, I just want to show you this while we're talking about neurons and dendrites. Okay, so here's a nerve. Okay, all right. Now once again, okay, here's the neuron and here's the dendrites. Okay, the dendrites are the short bushy deals on the end here that we're trying to connect. All right. Now let's say that this is the brain, and let's say that this is your calf muscle. Okay, so the brain says to the muscle, it either says contract or relax. That's the only message the brain ever sends: contract or relax to the muscles. So the brain says, calf muscle, we want to try to run, so we want to contract and then relax, contract and relax, and get that muscle motion going. So all of a sudden, every time it contracts, boom, we send this electrolyte, we send this neurotransmitter down there. Well, while you're doing that, you start to sweat, you start to lose salts, and lo and behold, the neurotransmitters are carried with electrolytes. So all of a sudden, we've got this calf muscle, and it's contracting and it's tight. Oh man, that muscle's working, and here we go. And then all of a sudden we run out of electrolytes. We don't have enough salts in our body. We don't have enough potassium. We don't have enough sodium. So all of a sudden, boom, boom, we send the information, okay, muscle, it's time to relax. And lo and behold, the brain sends that message, but the neurotransmitter that's supposed to make the synapses, oh, it might not be able to occur because we don't have enough water in our body, or we don't have enough sodium or enough potassium or enough electrolytes. So lo and behold, what's happening? That muscle is contracting, and we're like, shut off. Oh, come on, quit contracting. But it can't tell it until we get a complete synapses. So that's why if you don't have enough water, if you get dehydrated, or sometimes you're out, maybe you're running, maybe you're playing a sport. I know when I coached football, we would have pickle juice in the locker room because at halftime these kids would drink pickle juice because, man, they were getting these cramps. Like, I don't know what's wrong. And so this pickle juice would add electrolytes. So remember, when we talk about the brain, that there's so much more to it. The neurons and the nervous systems have to be able to make connections. And we'll talk later about electrolytes and neurotransmitters and that type of thing. But I want you to understand neurons, this whole system is a system of nerves, also known as the individual cell, as the neuron, and what? The dendrites, the short, bushy, branch-like, see these? Okay, that's the dendrites. When the dendrites connect, then that allows these synapses to occur and sends the information from one cell to the other. Okay, that being said, there's two divisions of the nervous system. There's the central nervous system, the CNS. The central nervous system is simply the brain and the spinal cord. So the central nervous system is the brain. Now, the brain and the spinal cord. Now, I'm going to show you that C-H-O-R-D, there's two different kinds of spellings in C-O-R-D. I want to talk about that for just a second, because a lot of times, especially in psychology or in science, what happens is we go through the American translation. Now, in the good old US of A, you can say any words you want to, okay? You know, I kind of like the word honking. You know, I don't know where it came from. Geese honk, okay? Cars honk, but it can be honking big, okay? So if you're doing Latin, you can't just make up a word. You got to go before a linguistic committee. So what does the United States do? We just make up our own words. So we don't like to say spinal cord, okay? So we change that to C-O-R-D, cord. So when you see things spelled different, it might be the original spelling. What's right, what's wrong? Well, that's not really an issue, because in America, we're what we call a functional language. It's functional. It's like as long as you know what I'm saying and I know what you're saying, we're good. Spanish, Latin, French, those are poetic languages. Those languages flow. Uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, seis, siete. You know, all of the flowing languages. You know, in American we say, oh, me, are you talking to me? Okay, but in French it's moi, because it's a poetic language. So we got to understand that in America we just change things. We just change things to be the way we see them, or the way it works. So, for example, it's a perfect example, and I don't want you to get caught up on this. I just want you to understand, when you see different spellings, it's probably gone through the American version of making it simple. So, for example, if you have what we would call a 2-liter Coke, okay, or you have a liter of Pepsi, or you have a liter of Dr. Pepper, okay, we say liter, L-I-T-E-R. Why? Because that's how it sounds to us. But the real word is litre. Now, I was just recently in Canada, as a matter of fact, and everything was a litre, and they speak French. So everything was litre. And so when you said liter, they were like, yeah, there's one of them Americans. There's one of those Americans. Because nobody in the world says liter except Americans. It's a litre, okay? Same way with meter and kilometers and so forth. So I just don't want you to get caught up on spelling, and I think chord's a good word. You see it a lot in psychology, and you see it a lot in a lot of sciences, because the words come from Latin words. So if you see a difference in spelling, it's probably gone through the American version of let's make it simple and let's see what we got. Okay. So for example, we measure electrical current through an ampere. Okay. All right. So an ampere is what we have. Well, you probably heard of the American version, right? Yep, that's an amp. So we just take off that poetic part on the end and Americanize it, and there we go. So anyway, so that works pretty good, and I don't want to make a big deal about that, but you're going to see different spellings, and I just want you to go, oh, that's been through the American version. So if you get an argument with somebody in college, and they're like, oh, that word is this and that word's that, you can say, well, yeah, but it went through the American translation, and we simplified it to this. So hopefully that'll help you a little bit. So the two divisions of the nervous system, the central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system, everything outside of the spinal cord. So we have the brain, we have the spinal cord, okay? And then coming off of that spinal cord, we're going to learn later all the different nerves that go off. So all these nerves go off from the spinal cord. And they go out the whole body. They go down the arm. They go down through the leg. You have the sciatic nerve that goes through your. We'll talk about these a little bit later. Through your leg, through your back. We teach in class Human Anatomy, Biology 211 and 212. Great class. We get into that in a lot of detail. But everything that goes beyond the spinal cord is called the peripheral nervous system. Everything with the brain and the spinal cord, that's the central nervous system. Now, why are we talking about this in psychology? Why are we going to spend so long talking about this brain, okay? Because we've got to understand in psychology that we might have situations to where the brain thinks different, or we could have problems with the peripheral nervous system that we never get that message. So it's kind of one of those things where as we begin to learn about the brain and how we think and how we work, then we begin to understand what could go right and possibly what could go wrong. So once again, just a real quick introduction here. We just started the parts of the brain, and we'll pick up with the next bit.